Moses and the burning bush. We might make plans and think we have our lives in front of us all figured out, but until we know and align them with what God is really to do through us, we will never maximize our true potential. Proverbs 16 verse 9. A man's heart plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. Turning from our own plans and yielding to His calling launches us into an unimaginable realm in our lives. In this teaching, we are going to consider the life of Moses and how the incidents of the burning bush changed the course of his life forever, and how he moved from one who was tending to his father-in-law's flock to one of the greatest vessels to be used by God to carry out the assignment of liberating His people from the captivity they had been in for over 4 centuries. The book of Exodus, chapter 3, captures the story of the burning bush. But before that, let us quickly consider the very popular story that preceded this event. The first book of Exodus opens with the inhuman treatment the Israelites had to suffer in the hands of the Egyptians. God blessed the children of Israel with so much strength that the Egyptians began to fear that, should this continue, it would just be a matter of time before the Israelites overpower them. Surprisingly, even the hard labor that the Israelites were forced to undergo daily seemed not to take a toll on them. Then, Pharaoh decided to devise another means to subdue them. He ordered that all newly born Hebrew males to be put into the Nile. It was around the time this decree was made that Moses was born. However, God had other plans for Moses, and that was the beginning of his journey. Exodus 2 verse 5 to 9. Then the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river, and her maidens walked along the riverside. And when she saw the ark among the reeds, she sent her maid to get it. And when she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby wept. So she had compassion on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call a nurse for you from the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for you?" And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go." So the maiden went and called the child's mother. Then Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages." So the woman took the child and nursed him. And the child grew, and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. So she called his name Moses, saying, "Because I drew him out of the water." He was rescued by Pharaoh's daughter and was raised in the palace as royalty, but he knew that wasn't where he was meant to be. He decided to identify with his people, and this unfortunate identification led him to take a life of an Egyptian in defense of his Hebrew brother. The news didn't take long to get out, and Moses, who sensed immediate danger, decided to flee from Egypt. His escape led to his meeting with a distant relative, Jethro, who later became his father-in-law and whose sheep Moses was tending and taking for pasture on Mount Horeb before the unusual encounter he had in the bush. It was a typical day in the life of Moses as a herder, but it was the day God chose to turn Moses' life and changed his life forever. How he transited to be the one who delivered God's people from the bondage of 400 years is only what could have been masterminded by God himself. No matter where we think we are coming from or where we are, God can use us mightily. He is not a respecter of persons or one to choose using the biased lens of humans. He chooses those he wants and consecrates them for reasons best known to him. Proverbs 3 verse 5 and 6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths." Moses witnessed an unusual encounter in the wild. God manifested himself in a burning bush. Exodus 3 verse 1 to 4. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the back of the desert and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire from the midst of a bush. So he looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, but the bush was not consumed. Then Moses said, "I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush does not burn." So when the Lord saw that he turned aside to look, God called to him from the midst of the bush and said, "Moses, Moses." And he said, "Here I am." What made the sight even spectacular at that point wasn't the mystery in the burning bush that wasn't consumed, albeit by the flames, but it became the event that preceded a chain of other spectacular happenings in Moses' life and the imminent liberation of the Israelites from bondage and other events that followed throughout the book of Exodus. God speaks when you least expect it. For Moses, the day he encountered God through the burning bush would have started off just like every other day. Encountering God was the last experience he would have imagined that day. God speaks to us in the most unexpected ways in the unlikeliest of places. We need to constantly prepare our hearts and look out for even the most subtle sign that will make us recognize that God is trying to pass a message across to us at a particular time. The instruction is to watch and pray. While we pray and expect God for certain miracles, we should also not be ignorant of his workings and the different means he is deploying to answer our prayers. When God gives you a clear sign, you need to act. After God appeared to Moses in that unusual manner, one remarkable thing that followed that event was Moses' obedience and surrender. Even though his natural instinct made him raise questions, he still yielded and hearkened to God's call upon his life. Proverbs 16 verse 1 to 4. The preparations of the heart belong to man, but the answer of the tongue is from the Lord. All the ways of a man are pure in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the spirits. Commit your works to the Lord, and your thoughts will be established. The Lord has made all for himself, yes, even the wicked for the day of doom. God chooses to communicate and manifest himself through diverse means and ways. Whatever way he has chosen to show himself, we shouldn't delay or ignore what he is telling us to do. Sometimes he puts a nudge in our spirit. Other times, it is just a strong impression for us to yield to him at a particular time. Doing God's will starts from obedience and timely attendance to what he is communicating to us. Until we understand that God's plans supersede ours, and his plans are way above ours, we won't maximize our purpose in him. Proverbs 19, verse 21. There are many plans in a man's heart. Nevertheless, the Lord's counsel, that will stand. Whenever we allow God to lead us and key into what he has in mind for us, we launch ourselves into the realms of his infinite goodness and glory. 1 Corinthians 2 verse 9 reaffirms and reminds us of what God has in mind for them that love him. But as it is written, eye has not seen, nor ear heard, nor have entered into the heart of man the things which God has prepared for those who love him.